31 by my clock, and so we're going to start the March 10th, 2014 Select Board meeting. We've got a few things to take up here before special town meeting. Looks like it will be a board of 2. We received a quick little note from Colette at 6:10 saying that she would not be able to attend this evening. So last time she had a broken foot, broken foot. That didn't sound very long. So first off, let's finish up. Oh yeah, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 audio recording devices. 6? 3 here, 4, 5. Oh, 5, and then 1 video recording device. So, a few minutes here, we'll get the bills paid, we'll sign the warrants. Good to see you, David.
Hi, guys.
You're on the mend?
No, it's not. The things are far. Yes.
All right, really our first order of business, after paying the bills and signing the warrants, Ron, you and I have to come to some kind of agreement on what we're going to support at the special town meeting in a few minutes on the transfer for Winter Road. So last Friday, when this warrant was processed, we were overdrawn on winter roads by $48,712.59. So here we are, the 10th day of March, and it's talking about a storm coming through. We put on the warrant $72,600.
And what are we at? 48?
We are almost $49,000 overdrawn. So personally, I think we should leave the 72.6, and if things really go our way, maybe Tom will have a chance to have a few loads of sand and salt to start next year with.
Sounds like a plan. We need a motion and
No,
it's in
we've
there.
already got it in there, but I think we just need to have some idea of what we're going to support. And that's in there. I don't,
We don't think we need more.
why don't I just run into the finance committee and let them know that we can't have any more anyway.
Yeah, I know.
We can't have any more from that account, so. We got a few minutes here. Saw Buzz here a few minutes ago. How much time do you need to get ready for town meeting?
I am ready right now.
Well, the clock isn't ready for you right now. We'll try to get a few more pieces of business done.
I think you should.
Would you like to take up the minutes of February 26th?
I would.
Alright. I went over them, I thought they looked very good. Do you have any
I did.
additions? Go ahead.
I was fine with the bulk of the minutes, except we had left out the minutes section, and it was a heavy session for dealing with a ton of minutes. I had like 6 minutes that we cleaned up and approved, amended and approved, and I don't see any reference to it. Yeah. That needs to get added. You want those dates? I haven't.
No, I have them all right here.
Is it 6?
They read.
Oh,
Is it
okay.
6 of them or 5 of them?
1, 2, 7.
I had 113, 115, 127, 23, 210, 217.
And 4-8. Oh,
No, we hadn't done 4-8 yet.
4-8 till the next one.
Right, that's later in this agenda. So, you have anything else?
I didn't. The only thing I was wondering, and it sounds fine with me, but should it, under liaison reports, where it's says, it's the third thing from the bottom. It says, Lukart then starts a brief discussion of moving the fire department and the police department up to the highway garage. I mean, should there be an addition in there that, I mean, we didn't make a decision on it, but I made comments that I didn't think there was much wisdom in that. It wasn't like it was brought up and just dropped. We did have a discussion on it.
My only concern is it wasn't an agenda item. It was under liaisons, right? So it seems like a pretty important thing to be carried on a lot of deliberations. I just thought, fine to let it hang out there like that, kind of. But I'd be open to going a little further with it. I mean, we didn't make a decision.
We didn't make a decision, but I mean, it's
Not
not like,
appropriate to add a sentence.
I wouldn't want it to sound like she brought it up and we just ignored it.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you want to add it, yeah, I mean, I think just that I replied that I didn't think it was going to work into the system very well, especially, I remember bringing up that I didn't think it was really good to move the fire department away from the furthest, the most densely populated area. That wouldn't be terrible. Do you have anything else, Rob?
I don't. Motion.
The document list seemed to be complete. Yeah, motion to sign.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the February 26, 2014 minutes as amended.
I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that one's out of the way. We've got 14 minutes by my clock before the special town meeting. Want to hit that April 8th?
I'd love to.
All right. Mary and Lynn, we've listened to those minutes again as to what was included. What did we find out? Just the letter was the only thing referred to. Ron, you?
Yes, after listening to a lot of video recordings, which is not my favorite subject, especially having sat through the session the first time, I wrote something for the record, and I'd like to hand it out. But my opinions in there, basically, I guess I agree with what Mary and Dave said, with a small exception.
So, Mary, on the Attorney General's letter, what they were really after is that we add that Kachina was, her apartments at the Ashfield.
The addition that I had was that if you go to our June 6 revision as amended, it has document 3, which is Governor Patrick's document, and so what we need to do is modify that to, I believe it's document 7. I say it in the last paragraph on this thing, what my recommendation to do is. And if you agree with me, Mr. Chair, I can put a motion together that we make that amendment and clean up those documents. We have the digital version still, don't we? Because I think at this point, with it being before the AG, it might be better to digitally do it rather than just write it in. I like writing it in, but after the third time, I think it makes more sense to make it a little more formal. Yeah.
So, actually, we'll go ahead, make your motion.
So, okay, I'll make a motion, then I'll discuss it later. My motion is to accept the minutes of April, let me think for a second, April 8th, as amended on April 17th, and again on June 3rd, and today. Those are both in 2013, and today, which is March 10th, 2014.
And the addition on March 10th.
Is on the second line beneath appointments, I think the words document 3 should be struck and replaced with the following sentence. This letter is hereby referenced and attached to these minutes as document 7. Just a sentence in there. And I have a copy of those June ones if you want to look at that.
Don't we need to have the addition to the actual minutes that...
In the document list?
No, in the actual minutes that the reference to the actual... That's already in. It is in the minutes.
Was it? I have it right here.
Was that at the last, when we got the first time?
Let me look at it just a second.
Yeah, we did it last week.
Oh, you did it last week.
That was already added.
So, with the addition,
But not those other... Right, we
Right.
made that change. Right, we made that change.
right.
Right. It says an ongoing issue with her project in the action,
Okay.
that she had discussed with previous selectors, described within the letter. That was added to the AG.
Right. On that meeting of April 8th, we discussed the letter that we were presented at that time. Only.
So, do you understand the amendments, to today's amendments to the ones that we discussed most recently?
You want to take that?
Document 3 out and just insert that sentence. Are you all right with that?
Yep. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Buzz?
Yes, sir.
You want to get things lined up, I know.
Well, I think we need a finance committee board.
Yeah, they'll be ready. We've got about 10 minutes there.
Yeah,
It organized.
I'm over.
got to turn the floor over to the moderator.
Good evening. Thank you. Where is our finance committee?
They're hiding in the back.
Oh, I didn't get them? Well, I think we're going to ask them for their opinion. Is it, we still have a couple minutes? I have a question for you.
Oh, I get it right here. And that's what you get.
Well, why don't we ask some people go and grab a few chairs. We have some.
Right on your tripod. Yeah, that's true.
Satch, you're listening. I didn't mean you're listening. I don't see. Looking at how many are standing. I think that's very fair. Thank you, sir. Let's say 7 o'clock yet.
No.
3 minutes.
No. No, they wouldn't do that. I was waiting for you to say
Oh, great.
Did they see all the boxes I got already this morning?
I was like, who's nervous? But we took all the boxes that were in the land and they're now all by the bottle.
Oh, great.
And we filled some
They're all registered.
and they had a delete from the collection. Important to do. And then there was a some things that they were taking. That's great.
Finance Committee. Good evening. Call this meeting to order. Thank you all for coming. And now we have a Finance Committee and we are ready to rock and roll. I just wanted to ask a question. Who is not a registered voter of the town of Ashfield, other than Ms. Mark and you two folks? Or anybody else? Okay, you refrain from voting when we ask people to vote. No. I think let me introduce the people. Let me have them introduce themselves. We've never really done it. Introduce yourselves, please. Starting with you.
I am John Tansworth.
Tom Carter, Chairman of the Select Board.
Ron Kohler, Select Board.
David Mill, Finance. Ted Murray, Chair of the Finance Committee. Tom Schreiber, Finance Committee.
And once again, as always, our gratitude for all the work you put in on our behalf. And here we are. I would ask the town clerk to please read the return on the warrant.
To either of the constables of the town of Ashfield in the county of Franklin, greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby directed to notify and warn the inhabitants of said town qualified to vote in elections and town affairs to meet at the Ashfield Town Hall in said Ashfield on Monday, the 10th of March 2014 at 7 o'clock in the evening, then and there to act on the following articles. And you are directed to serve this warrant by posting up attested copies thereof at the Ashfield Town Hall and the Ashfield Post Office in said town, 14 days at least before the time of holding said meeting. Hereof fail not and make due return of this warrant with your doings thereon to the town clerk at the time and place of meeting as foresaid. Given this day under our hands the 19th day of February in the year of our Lord 2014, signed by the Ashfield Select Board, a true copy attested by Elizabeth Shaw Constable, and pursuant to the then warrant, I have notified and warned the inhabitants of the town of Ashfield by posting up attested copies of the same at the Ashfield Town Hall and the Ashfield Post Office 19 days before the date of the meeting as within directed, and signed on the 19th by Elizabeth Shaw, 19th of February.
Thank you. Betty Stewart, you agreed to be a teller and a counter tonight, so thank you. And we will need your services, I'm sure, for the last 3 articles anyway, which will require a majority. So, Article 1, to see if the town will vote to appropriate up to $4,634.60 from the Sewer Enterprise Fund to compensate the treatment plant operator for unused vacation time or act relative thereto. Is there a motion?
I have a motion.
Yes.
Nancy Hoff, I'm on the Sewer Commission. I move the town appropriate $4,634.60 from the Sewer Enterprise Fund to compensate the treatment plant operator for unused vacation time.
Second?
Second.
Would you like to give us a little bit of an
Yes,
explanation?
Betty or Elizabeth is our operator, has been for a number of years, and often we've been in situations where she hasn't been able to take a vacation because there is no one else to operate the plant. We had an assistant operator a number of years ago that went by the wayside. We now, for several months, pushing a year, have had an assistant operator and a backup. So we are in really good shape now for this kind of situation. But she had a year where she literally could not take a vacation, and she had accrued as many hours as was legal in our town, and this seemed to be the only fair thing to compensate her. And so she had no loss, and it comes out of the sewer fund, so it's not a tax burden. Any questions? Or we asked that.
Well, we'll find out if there are any questions. First, we'll hear from the Finance Committee, but thank you. Is there a recommendation from the Finance Committee?
Yeah, the Finance Committee unanimously recommended.
That was Tom Schreiber. Thank you, Mr. Schreiber. Any questions? Any comments? Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor of appropriating up to $46.34.60 from the Sewer Enterprise Fund to compensate the plant operator for unused vacation time, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's a big U next to that one. Article 2. Is there any objection to waiving reading by me, and we'll just hear the motion itself? Since I guess the first question is there anybody who doesn't have a copy of the warrant who wishes to have one? Is there a copy of that? Okay. So any objection to me waiving the reading by me? You'll just hear it from me.
No.
Good. So, Ms. Huff, is there another motion on Article 2?
Article 2, yes.
I move the town appropriate $10,000 from the sewer enterprise fund to replace the truck at the wastewater treatment plant.
Is there a second?
The state requires that we have our own vehicle, and the little Toyota we have will not pass inspection any longer. And Mr. Poissant has graciously been helping out with one of the town trucks while we waited for a special town meeting. Now we were here. We do not need a new vehicle. This is a vehicle that maybe gets 1,000 miles a year put on it, so we are looking for a used one, and we'll solicit suggestions, but we are in search.
Thank you. Finance Committee recommendation.
Mr. Moderator, the
Mr. Mills.
Finance Committee recommends unanimously in support of the article.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Questions? Comments, discussion? Yes.
I do have one question.
Mr. Lilly, I think.
Oh, excuse me. Alan Lilly, Watkins Spruce Corner Road.
Thank you.
Just got one question. Seems like every year or every other year, seems like the town needs to get a pickup for the town crew. And if I'm right, seems like there's 3 or 4 pickups running around now. Is there a way that one of those pickups could be used at the sewer plant since they only put out 1,000 miles a year?
Thank you. Somebody address that question.
I can.
Oh, good.
I'm Dan Lovett. I'm also on the sewer commission. And I'm also a licensed civil engineer, and I deal a lot with treatment plants and the DEP in general. And the problem, or the potential problem that the wastewater treatment plant has is they have pump stations that have dual pumps, and sometimes they get clogged up. And so sometimes, it could be a Sunday, it could be Friday night, it can be whenever. The pumps get clogged up, and then you're going to get sewage backing up at, like, the lake house, say. And they're going to have to shut down, and all the people, like down in Bronson Ave and stuff, are going to have major issues. So we have to have a vehicle on hand 24/7 without having to call someone from the town, highway department, or anybody else at the operator's disposal for use. So that's why that's one of the reasons why the DEP actually requires, under our groundwater discharge permit, that the wastewater treatment plant has a vehicle. That's the main reason why. So, hope that answers your question.
Mr. Newell, you have a follow-up?
Yes. What I was thinking is moving one of those trucks. I don't know how many there is over there, but there's enough, probably. Move one right down there and forget about it. Is that possible?
Anybody else? Carter.
Well, that's what we've been doing for the last 4 or 5 months, is using one of those trucks and making it available. Those trucks, especially in the spring when they start going around and wanting to clean culverts, both of those trucks are busy. One's the superintendent's truck, and one gets assigned to somebody to go to do projects or run for parts or all those things. So it can't really be in both places at one time. And I think the point made about the wastewater permit that we have, you could get away with it for a while, but if the state inspector showed up, they would be looking to see that all your ducks are in a row. So.
Other questions, comments? You ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of appropriating $10,000 from the sewer enterprise fund to replace the truck at the plant, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 2 passes unanimously.
But you said 10,000, and this is written up to 10,000. She read it as specifically
Thank you.
10,000, and I would hope that we voted for up to 10,000.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Ms. Blaine. I'm going to have us revote. The motion is to appropriate up to $10,000 from the sewer enterprise fund to replace the truck at the wastewater treatment plant. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, that was an important clarification. Article 3, is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer $2,200 from vocational school expenses to fire department expenses.
Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. Would you like to explain?
Yeah, this article came by way of the fire chief, of course, since it has to do with fire department expenses. And what it is to put money back into their account to help cover the extra payroll expenses that were incurred in the fire up on Briar Hill Road in January. When we make the budget for the fire department, we don't really budget for these extraordinary type problems. So this is to get that money back in there so we won't be short for the rest of the year.
Sorry, Mr. Carter, do you want to address why from the vocational school expenses?
Because we have extra money in vocational school expenses, and most notably that's because our friends in the Finance Committee have been doing a great job on watching that account and helping with transportation.
Super. Thank you. Recommendation from the Finance Committee.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends unanimously in favor of this warrant article.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Discussion? Questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to say this very carefully. All those in favor of transferring up to $2,200 from vocational school expenses to fire department expenses, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Article 4. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town transfer $1,233 from the auditor's account to Veterans Benefits Local.
Second.
Okay, would you like a little explanation here?
The local portion of the Veterans Benefits is never a number that you know well in advance, and what we budget is purely a budget figure from prior experience. And with some extra expenses that the town has had to pay this year, we would have a shortfall of $1,233. So this is to keep us from getting into that overexpended situation. As far as the money coming from the auditing account, we have a surplus of money in that that will certainly get us through the end of the year.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Finance Committee recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Discussion? Okay, ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of transferring $1,233 from auditor to veteran benefits local, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 2 passes unanimously. Article 5, is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town transfer $200 from traffic speed trailer to the appeals board expense.
Is there a second? Heard one out there, right? There was that. A second. Good. Explanation. Mr. Carter.
We have an extra, I believe an extra $1,000 or $1,200 in what was appropriated last June for the traffic speed trailer for the police department, and because of the appeals board activity this year, their budget would be short, so this is taking care of that.
Recommendation. Finance.
The Finance Committee, Mr. Moderator, recommended this article unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Discussion. I can't shut you people up. Okay, I guess we're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Article 6. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer $72,600 from free cash to the winter roads expense.
Second.
Please explain.
At this point in time, we're call it $49,000 overdrawn in winter roads. We started with $85,000. Winter, according to the weather forecast tonight, isn't quite decided to give up yet. And I'm hoping, certainly we all hope that it gives up soon. So we don't only want to cover our shortfall that we know we have now, we'd like to have enough to get us through the next few weeks. This $72,600 figure, it may not be enough, but we certainly hope it is. If it's a little too much, the worst thing that would happen is that we would have a little inventory of sand and salt to start next year with. But our original appropriation and the weather that we got this year, they just haven't been able to keep pace with each other. So we can overspend winter roads. It's like the one account that we have state authority for winter roads to overexpend and deficit spend. And we could actually leave it till the end of the year, but next year that would dock our free cash. So instead of trying to play with any mirrors, this would be the reason for this is to even everything up so we all know exactly where we are.
Thank you. Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Murray.
the Finance Committee recommends unanimously in favor of this article, and I'd like to make a brief explanatory comment if I might.
Please do.
One of the concerns was alluded to already by the chair of the Select Board in that it's possible the $72,600 being sought would be more than needed for winter roads. Although, as you heard, there's some advantage. There is money left over to buy into the future with some extra sand and salt for the coming next year. But one of my concerns personally was that we might be dipping pretty aggressively into what free cash we have. We have $322,600 some currently certified in free cash for the town, which is really quite an advantageous financial position to be in. That represents about 8% of our overall budget of some $4 million as a town. And the common yardstick used for a lot of towns in our vicinity is that you ought to keep something like, or aspire to have about 5% of your annual budget somehow held in free cash for contingencies and so forth. Well, if we took the $322,600 and deducted the $72,600 being sought, we would end up with $250,000 in free cash. And the good news is that still amounts to about 6.25% of our overall budget, which I think is comfortably in excess of the 5% guideline that we as a Finance Committee would typically seek in terms of keeping our free cash in a very comfortable and sound financial situation. So it's with that in mind that we would recommend in favor of this article.
Thank you. Discussion, Mr. Lilly.
Alan Lilly, Watson Spruce Corner Road. I kind of have the same concern he does. I was reading the article, it's talking about up to $72,000. Now, does that mean that we use the money as we need? And if we don't need it all, it still stays in free cash? Or are you going to take the whole $72,000 to begin with?
Please, Mr. Carter.
The motion I made is a little different than it reads. The motion I made was to move $72,600. So, like I said, my motion is to move all that into that account, work on it until winter roads is done, when we go on general highway.
Why not do it like Ted says and move it as we need it? Move 650 or 60,000, and if we didn't need it, that would stay in the free cash.
It would. Alan, I think that you could do it either way. You really could. Our problem that we talked about last week when we had a budget meeting is that if we are truthful with ourselves of what it costs year over year to run winter roads, it's much higher than the $85,000, $86,000 we appropriate. Winter roads, to a certain extent, historically in the budget, has been a bit of a whipping boy. Okay, if you can't make it work anywhere else, well, we'll appropriate a little bit less at winter roads. If there was an extra $10,000 or $15,000, I mean, it's amazing when you come in every 2 weeks and sign the warrants to see how fast this money disappears on this account. But if there is an extra $10,000 or $15,000 or whatever there is, there's no harm in us having an inventory of sand and salt to start next fall with, which Tom has been very good at keeping the inventory quite low, hoping that it will stop. So it seems though if we're going to have really big problems in my mind if we can't make next year's budget work with the $250,000 that's left in free cash.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Oh, sorry, Mr. Murray.
Mr. Moderator, just bearing further on what the chair of the select board said. It's true that, in fact, we have been budgeting rather modestly for winter road expenses these past few years, something on the order of $85,000, $86,000 per year. This clearly is a year where we've spent a lot more than that. In past years, we've spent more than that as well. We had to transfer money from free cash or some other source to pay for winter roads. At the Select Board's initiative this time in our budget discussions just a week ago, it was suggested that rather than allow ourselves to constantly be catching up, we try to do a better job budgeting by taking the last 3 years' actual expenditures for winter roads and use that average expenditure as a bit of a bogey or a target for what we think winter roads would be going forward. Now, we still might be under, we could be over. It seems more realistic, and with that in mind, for fiscal year 2015, our current estimate is not $86,000 as in the current budget, but it's $105,000. So when the budget comes up for consideration at annual town meeting, you'll find that the winter roads account is listed as an estimated $105,000 we think we're going to need. That, if anything, should probably make these kinds of transfers at special town meetings in future a lot more modest. But again, the weather is the big variable. We don't know for sure, but I think it's more realistic that we look at something on that order of magnitude.
Any other questions or comments? Somebody want to move to amend by banning any more winter? You ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of transferring $72,600 from free cash to winter roads, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Well, we are in unanimity today. Article 7. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town transfer $4,200 from the Fred Cross Fund to the Town Hall Fire Station account.
Second?
Second.
Made and seconded. Explanation, please.
Last year at the annual town meeting, we didn't budget. We budgeted for a lot of different things. One of them was $10,000, I believe it was, to do as a capital account for the town hall and the fire station. And we had things figured out, excavation under the town hall, updating the electrical in the fire department, and a few of these other things. But we lacked budgeting to get the town hall painted. So when we had help that was available to us this summer, the sheriff's department brought a whole crew of what seemed to me to be very qualified and diligent young men, and they painted the town hall and the fire station. The charges for the paint and so forth, $4,200, was charged to that capital account. So historically, what we've done is use this Fred Cross account for painting the town hall. And so what we want to do is we want to take and just reimburse that money back into that town hall capital account so we can continue some of the projects that we originally had in our mind we wanted to get done.
Thank you. Finance Committee.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommended for this with a vote of 2-0-1, one abstention.
Thank you. Questions, comments, discussion?
Mr. Moderator.
Yes, Mr. Newell.
Question for the board. The primary purpose of the 10,000 appropriation was electrical communications upgrade for town hall and the fire department, of which I understand a little over 7,000 has been expended this year. And the question is, are you all done? Are they all done? Do you anticipate any further expenditures charged against this line?
Against the line of town hall, the town hall capital?
Against the 10,000 appropriation.
Yeah, good question. I really don't believe we've scratched the surface on the capital that could be spent at either location. We really haven't come up with a long-range plan. I mean, last year at budget time, we talked about the needs, and one of the huge needs next door to the fire department is inadequate wiring. And certainly the town hall could be much in the same boat, especially when we look, now that it's excavated down underneath us and we see how the wiring and so forth was done. So not only do I think what we're reimbursing is going to be used, right now, if we can afford it, I would think that we'd have to put another $10,000 in next year and probably another $10,000 after that, and get a real vision of what the electrical work and so forth needs to be at this complex.
Mr. Newell.
And, Mr. Chairman, can you tell me what has been accomplished this year and what hasn't?
Probably the single largest thing is the electrical. More to do with the firehouse than with the town hall, but there was some update to the town hall also. But really, most of it has to do with the firehouse.
Chief, do you want to speak to this at all? Chief Haskins, do you want to speak to this?
I'm still waiting for the weather to get better so we can do it.
All right, so more work to do. Mr. Newell, questions answered?
I've heard the report. So thank you.
Anything else? Ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of transferring $4,200 from the Fred Cross Fund to the Town Hall Fire Station account, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
That motion passes. Thank you. Article 8.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Kohler.
I move the town authorize the select board to enter into a boundary line agreement with Sherilyn F. Scott to settle the boundary line of the partings on property that abuts on Bronson Avenue in Ashfield, Mass. Thus granting to Scott certain property and accepting for the town certain property as described in the warrant.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Will you explain what Article 8 is about, please?
This is Buckland Road. This is Bronson Avenue. Sherilyn F. Scott resides right here, shows in the audience. The town of Ashfield owns this abutting property, and two adjoining owners through parole agreements where retracement survey becomes difficult to ascertain the true boundary line, may agree to where the boundary line should be, and it will be binding on all parties thereafter. I personally met with the surveyor, Daniel Warner, who surveyed the property, and due to some conflicting title elements and dimensional aspects and lack of monumentation, there was uncertainty as where this line would exist on the ground. Sherry maintains a bunch of bushes here. For those of you who have been out to the parking, this is a parking area for the old Sanderson building and the walkways across the way there. There's a bunch of bumpers down here, that concrete bumpers that vehicle tires are supposed to abut. And it was agreed upon that in a general sort of way, we can't make a formal agreement until the town allows us to. So this draft plan was prepared showing the proposed boundary line, and if agreed upon formally, there'll be a responsibility to set a monument there at the top of the bank, because it goes down to the brook, and then this plan would be recorded. And what happens is the town quick claims any interest that it has on the west side of that line, and Sherilyn will quick claim any interest that she might have on the east side of that line, and the boundary line is agreed upon going forward. So that's a encapsulation of what that boundary line agreement would be.
Thank you, Mr. Kohler. Finance Committee, the recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, we've not had we have no recommendation at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, because it doesn't. Okay, I'll accept that. Thank you. I should just tell you before we start discussing that this is going to require a supermajority of 2/3 because it involves the interest of land. Under Chapter 40, Section 14, anything involving an interest in land will require a 2/3 majority. So, discussion.
Mr. Moderator, I have a question for you. Do we need to read the article, or can we waive the article?
I asked that in the beginning. I'll give people the opportunity again. I asked whether we waive reading of the entire article because you have it in your hand. If one person said they wanted us to read the entire article as Mr. Combs' motion, then we would read the deed description and everything else that's contained in Article 8. Does anybody specifically ask for that? Okay, so we have formally waived that. So, are we ready to vote?
That question?
Mr. Lilly?
What about the other side? There's no problems on the other side?
No. You mean this side over here?
No, the other side.
Up here?
East side of
Keep going, the next property line.
Over here.
Is there problems there?
Well, the surveyor was dealing with their interests, right? So he didn't survey all the other properties. He was able to, if I recall, there might have been a monument of non-record here. But he wasn't surveying this line. He was more involved with this line.
If you're going through all this and you've got a surveyor there, I'd feel a lot more confident if we had our whole lot side surveyed out, so we didn't go through this again on the other side.
So
If there's monuments there, that's fine, but if there isn't,
let me explain that Sherilyn paid the surveyor over here, and I have a moderate amount of survey experience myself. And so that's why I was appointed by the board to go out and share with this person. And in my professional opinion, this was a good decision as a Massachusetts professional land surveyor. Now, if the town wanted to appropriate some money or direct the Scotts to pay for the survey of our other line, that goes beyond the purpose of this article. And we had no funding for that. We would be deficit spending if we directed the surveyor to survey additional lines.
I'm just saying, if you got a survey
I'm sorry.
there, you got.
Mr. Lilly, I'm recognizing you, but please ask to be recognized. No, you're just saying, you can finish your sentence, I just would like you not to be too
If we're
comfortable.
there, why not solve all the problems that we might end up with 5 years down the road? Well, we got a lot of free cash at 250,000, so we could just.
Thank you, Mr. Lilly. Mr. Newell.
Alan, Mr. Moderator, when I chaired the demolition committee, when we took the old school down, our committee not only dealt with the properties and worked cooperatively with the trustees up on the hill, up in the flat where the school was, we also dealt with the ancillary properties, including this piece of property, which, as I recollect, was called the garden lot in the old days, and also the 6-foot wide lot that runs between the Naraki home and the other home in the corner that goes up. Could you show me where that is, the walkway?
I think it's just the walkways up here.
And my memory serves me that our committee's work on this was that the solid lines were relating to the Fessenden steps, relating to the walkway, and relating to the, what's that, the east line of the garden lot, and the fuzzy line, which we didn't bother with, related to the west line of the garden lot. And so what Mr. Kohler has done is, I think, all that really needs to be done. I remember our committee looked at the other lines regarding the Fessenden steps, and well, actually, we ended up surveying the Fessenden steps. We opted not to survey the walkway, and we left untouched the matter of the garden lot. This is where Mr. Kohler and his efforts have paid off. Part that's broken that needs fixing in public expenses for the west line, and that's what you're looking at here, and I think we can leave these on the line.
Thank you, Mr. Lilly. Other discussion? Okay, we ready to vote? Excuse me. All those in favor of authorizing the Select Board to enter into a boundary line agreement with Cheryl and F. Scott, to settle the boundary line of the parties on property that abuts on Bronson Avenue in Ashfield, thus granting to Scott certain property and accepting for the town certain property as described in the warrant, say aye.
Aye.
Even if it's unanimous. Okay. I forgot. I was told beforehand, the town clerk thinks because it requires 2/3, even if it's unanimous, we should have a hand count. And she told me that, and I was all ready, but I was on a roll. You were on a roll. So, all those, Betty Scott, Betty Stewart, all those in favor, please raise one hand. Only those who are registered voters. Keep them up. Thank you. Thank you. You can put your hands down. All those opposed, please raise one hand and keep it up while we count. You happy now? Any abstentions? Okay. All right, thank you. Article 9. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Kohler.
point of order or information, I'm not sure. Is it possible the next two articles are very related? And I have some exhibits that relate to both of them, so instead of just jumping into one right away with a motion, to discuss them and then make a motion after. It's just 3 exhibits, make a motion after and vote on them separately.
Is there any objection to having discussion on a matter not on the floor? Hearing no objection, go ahead.
Okay. All right. This will go pretty quick. basically, we have a inspection report that gets done for the town every 2 years. The engineers time bond, and they inspect the dike and the dam of Ashfield Lake. And last time, which was dated 2/6/13, oh no, I'm sorry, it was dated September 7th, 2012. Our evaluation dropped from satisfactory to fair, which isn't a good thing for the town, because eventually, if it goes further, you can end up paying a lot of money for insurance because of the potential liability of a failing structure. The Select Board has a responsibility to maintain town property and so on. So, Ashfield Lake is considered a high hazard potential dam. It's also an intermediate size structure. Those are a couple things for you to remember. It gets a lot of attention from the dam safety board at the state level, and these inspection reports have to be evaluated. And during the last one, these are bits and pieces from that report. That report is available in the back room there. But under assessments, there were 14 of these. I didn't have enough room to list them all, but they include things like the surface of the dam is leaking. We're seeing water come through. This concerns us. There are a number of animal burrows. There were many, many things. But as it relates to tonight specifically, these two, and I'll read them out because I know the words are pretty small. It says, on the basis of the visual inspection and review of available information, Ashfield Pond Dam is generally considered in fair condition. Based on DCR rating guidelines. The dam was found to have the following deficiencies. As I said, there were 14 of them, but the first two were trees and dense landscaping shrubs growing on the embankment near the right abutment, and then trees and dense vegetation located within 20 feet of the toe of the dam. So that's what the next two slides are going to show you, is a little bit of that. I don't have to go over there.
It's not an old slide project.
I did this last minute. I would have had to make slides if I did. Okay, so basically, for those of you who recognize Ashfield Lake a little bit, this is the Nolan's property up here. Okay, the upper park is over here, and Decker Machine Works is down here. And for those of you who don't know it, we have a dry hydrant here to drain the lake. Okay, and basically, the next two articles are going to address, first, Decker's easement, and this is called a landscape easement, and this is an access easement. You'll notice that if you were out on the ground, you would see a driveway going up to that dry hydrant, an actual physical driveway. And this creates an easement over that driveway so that we can gain access to the dry hydrant and maintain the dry hydrant, and we don't have an easement today, which is a bit of a problem. So there will be two easements that I'll discuss there, and then the same will holds true for Nolan's, a maintenance easement here and an access easement here, because the boundary line between Decker's and Nolan's bisects right through there, so the access easement concerns both of them. And basically, the first article, which is Special Town Meeting Article 9, deals with two easements. One is this one, and one is the access easement. And specifically, this landscape easement here is for the purpose of cutting trees. If you were to go out there now, mostly on the Nolan's property, but to a certain extent, the same applies to here, there's dense vegetation. The red line is the boundary line. Ashfield owns the dike, right here. Here's the boundary line, which is at the toe of the slope. If you were to walk down the dike to where it hits level ground, that's more or less the boundary line. And then there's a bunch of poplar growing here. And the poplar, I'm going to tell you, some of it's about that big around. And the problem that the DCR has with that is that it creates a potential harm for the dam. The roots will go under the dam, the trees will fall over, they'll cause damage to the dam, you'll have flooding, loss of life, so on and so forth, because these trees will just keep continuing to grow. It's a perfect environment. And as with Deckers and Nolan's both, the intention is that we grade this sufficiently so we can get some machinery in there, have our highway crew mow it we would plant grass in there, that we could maintain it on a regular basis. Right now, if you go into the Nolan's property, it's very, very wet. The day I went in there, I needed my boots, and I was in standing water. Perhaps in the dry of summer, it wouldn't be so bad, but it would need some grading, and if it needs grading, then you're going to need some drainage issues over here on Deckers, because it all wants to end up behind Deckers machine work. So you need to get the water off-site into the brook. And the purpose of these two articles, in a nutshell, that's Deckers, and then relative to the Nolans, it's the exact same thing, is to create an easement that that's to the south of the boundary line for mowing, and an access easement for gaining access to the dry hydrant. That's the purpose of the next two articles. And I guess the Nolans and the Deckers are very nicely and graciously working with the town and are very cooperative in this effort. So that's a good thing.
So let's have us a motion.
Okay, motion. Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Kohler. Article 9.
I move the town authorize the select board to accept by gift, deed, purchase, take by eminent domain, or otherwise acquire an easement for maintenance and access to the dam at Ashfield Lake from Decker Machine Works, more particularly as described in the warrant.
Decker Machine Works, Inc., right? Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
I heard a second somewhere out there. And we just heard an explanation. Now, I assume, just for my own edification and anybody else who might be curious, because this isn't a money issue, the Finance Committee does not have a recommendation.
That is correct. The Finance Committee has no recommendation.
Thank you. Discussion. Mr. Lilly.
Lily, watches Bruce Corn. In the article, like I have to be very careful with Tom because you read it a little bit differently. It didn't say it wasn't going to be a purchase or it was not going to be an easement. You put 4 options in there, if I'm correct. Which option are we using? Eminent domain, an easement, or a purchase? Or a gift?
My response to that is town council drafted this up, and I only suppose, that although the parties may be fully agreeable today, someone might die tomorrow.
Yep.
They might sell the property tomorrow by the time the town moves, on this mission, because we have to get things drafted up and such. So they don't know the situation of tomorrow. So they create an all-encompassing sort of easement language so that we could proceed.
I guess if I wanted to proceed, or if I was Nolan's, I'd like to know what I was proceeding with, or the town. You should be looking at Nolan's and Deckers and saying, is this a gift? Is it an eminent domain, or what?
All I can say is that the Nolans have graciously cooperated with the town in a gift-like way, and so have the Deckers up to this point in time. But nothing formal has been signed by either party. I've met with both of them.
I could also add, just as years as a moderator and a citizen, that is the form that's generally taken for the acquisition of land. The town meeting has to authorize the town, and generally all those options are listed, even when there's a purchase and sale agreement. So I'll just add that for whatever that's worth. Mrs. Kohler.
Nina Kohler, Bailey Road. Even though you stated acquisition, Buzz, these landowners will continue to own this land. It's strictly an easement.
That's correct.
Thank you for your clarification. Mr. Murray.
Yeah, Mr. Moderator, it's my belief that if this did, for some reason, come back to involve a purchase, you'd have to reintroduce that to the town meeting to authorize such a purchase. So it's not, from our standpoint, at least as a finance committee, at this point, authorizing any money to change hands here. This is simply authorizing the select board to accept this easement and provide the framework by which this could be achieved.
Well, let Mr. Kohler answer that. I can only go by what I read.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not aware of any money being allocated for the purchase of this, and I would think that that would take a time vote to do something with that. And I'd ask Tom, but we're in recess, so I can't deliberate.
Yes, Mr. Cranston.
Doug Cranston, Superintendent Drive. I think we have to read this as to accept by gift an easement. You just put those words in their correct place, and that becomes your motion.
Well, we rely on town council for the proper wording. And this wording has been put forth to both the Deckers and the Nolans, and they didn't have an issue with it either. So, I mean, this is what town council suggests.
I understand the wording, and any time that the town has transferred any property or acquired property, it still gets into this same complicated type of wording to acquire property. It has to have all those aspects in it. If we agreed to buy a parcel and it was $10,000, right, and we were there, we would need authority, the select board would need authority just like this to pay for that. It would still be an eminent domain. You know, to always have the title clear and have that all cleaned up, it's always eminent domain. And so this is authorizing us to do it. I do believe the issue that Mr. Murray brought up is absolutely correct, that if there was any money associated with it, we would have to have that appropriated. Because we don't have any stash of cash anywhere, even though there's a couple of safes over here. There's really no stash of cash that we can go buy property around town, or in this case, just this easement. So the wording is so when it gets to the Registry of Deeds, all the legal beagles will put their stamp on it.
So in essence, what you are saying then is a gift by eminent domain for an easement for maintenance purposes. So you have all of those in there.
Any other discussion? Okay, ready to vote? This will require 2/3 majority, and just so the town clerk doesn't hit me, I'm going to make you hold your hands up. So all those, where is this Stewart?
She's right there.
All those in favor and who are registered voters, please raise one hand and keep it up. Thank you. Yes, thank you. And all those opposed, please raise your hand. None. And all those abstaining. 41 out of 41. I think that's the Okay. And the related Article 10. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Cole.
I move the town authorize the select board to accept by gift, deed, purchase, take by eminent domain, or otherwise acquire an easement for maintenance and access to the dam at Ashfield Lake by the Philip F. Nolan Jr. Funding Trust, more particularly as described in the warrant.
Is the word from the Philip F. Nolan or by?
I have the words from.
From, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Yes, Mr. O'Malley.
Tom Land, 561 Old Stage Road. This question obviously applies to both properties, but I'm wondering if either of these property owners are subject to liability if their lack of maintenance on their property damages the town's dike or main. And if that is the case, then it seems that would be sufficient encouragement for them to gift us the easement without paying for it.
That's a rather aggressive way of trying to accept a gift.
Ask me a question.
I'll tell you that at the time that the lake was repaired, the dike was repaired in '92, I believe, the boundary lines were hard and fast. There was no agreement made. There was nothing said about maintenance of land on the other side of that boundary line. So if there is some liability, they're not aware of it, I'm sure, you know, as owners.
Right.
Is there? That's a matter for the courts, I think.
Mr. Cranston.
It amazes me that all of a sudden they changed the rules of the game, but that's typical government process. They never said anything about all these trees that were growing below the dam site. They made us remove every tree that was on the dam at the time that they redid the dam. Why all of a sudden now are these trees such a problem that we have to remove them again? We'll never know probably, but that's just the way the government works. So anyway, even if we do have to move the trees, which we do apparently, it's just like anything else, like behind the building. It would be of no value to remove the trees if we didn't treat it like a lawn thereafter. And that's going to be really quite a chore to take care of this new lawn in the middle of that swamp. And I hope I don't have to handle it.
Other comments, questions?
Do you foresee the need for grading or improvement of that easement in order to maintain it?
I do. And there's been a lot of discussion, and if you come to the budget meetings over the course of the next couple of months, you'll hear more of it too. There was a time bond presentation, I'm going to guess a month ago, talking about this issue, along with the wall at the field. But down here is very wet, and it needs to be regraded. There's a problem. This end is a swamp down here, and to do anything in an automatic sort of way using machinery and such, you would have to regrade it. The minute you regrade it, more water is already going to come over here, and there's already a problem behind Deckers. They're already experiencing flooding and too much water draining from the road and from this end. There's a culvert that crosses this access easement. So it is something that's going to have to be addressed. Remember I told you there were 14 other aspects to this. Some of them deal with other issues related to what you're talking about.
Okay, so the appropriations for those potential modifications are still in front of us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions or comments?
Again, now this easement we're supposed to be purchasing, is this just for the town of Ashfield, or is this for anybody that wants to drive their truck up to that spot?
The easement would be for the exclusive use of maintaining landscaping for running in favor of the town of Ashfield.
Just the town
Period.
of Ashfield? Just the town, okay.
Other questions or comments? Ready, Mr. Cranston?
Being, what area does DEP get involved in all this?
If we go ahead and do grading, we will have to secure the appropriate permits for doing that. And that's up for discussion right now with the Finance Committee and between the Finance Committee and the Select Board. It's a significant project. Mind you, if our grading goes from fair to unsatisfactory or stays at fair for very long, the state's going to frown upon that. And I can't read the minds of the state. One of two things could happen. Maybe they come in with a bucket load of money and treat you like a charity case and do everything for you. Maybe they don't. Maybe all of a sudden, and Ty and Bond mentioned this at the public hearing, that the insurance rates for another structure that they're working on went up by $50,000 the minute it dropped to that lower rating. So the whole intent by dam safety is, health and safety and loss of life. And they want to make sure that these sort of structures remain safe. That's what it's all about.
Okay, any other questions, comments? No, are we ready? Okay, I'm sorry you're gonna have to do it by raising your hand again. So, all those in favor of authorizing the select board to accept by gift, deed, purchase, take by eminent domain, or otherwise acquire an easement for maintenance and access to the dam at Ashfield Lake from the Philip F. Nolan Jr. Funding Trust, as described in the warrant, please raise one hand. Registered voters. Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I almost forgot. All those opposed, please raise your hand. None. Any abstentions? Let me see that. It was at 44. Okay, thank you very much. I'm having so much fun, I couldn't believe it was it. Is there a motion to adjourn? And I heard a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you all for coming. Stay warm. Stay dry. Thanks for all the work.
I don't know if I'll find out whether he's going. Sometimes he stays and